Hi there, I'm Mr. Orr. I wanted to give you another example of the process of completing the square. So I've put another problem on the board here. It is x squared minus 4x minus 12 equals 0. If we factored this, we would get an x and an x, a 2 and a 6, a minus and a plus, and we would get x equals negative 2 and 6. All right, I'm going to leave the answer up here, but now we're going to solve it in a different way by completing the square. So I'm going to add this 12 to both sides. X squared minus 4x equals 12. Now, I want a number here that is going to turn this into a perfect square, meaning it will factor like this. To do that, I divide this in 2 and then square the result. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. If I added 4 to this side, I have to add 4 to the other side. Now, this factors into x minus 2 squared equals 16. Take the square root of both sides, and we get x minus 2 equals plus or minus 4. Plus 2 plus 2. I get x equals, now 4 plus 2 is 6, and 4 minus 2 is negative 2. And in fact, those are the same two answers we got by factoring. All right, let me show you now the process of deriving the quadratic formula. We start with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, in order to use the completing the square process, we cannot have a number, which a represents, other than 1 in front of the x squared. So I have to get rid of it, meaning I have to divide everything by a. And what that gives me is x squared plus b over a x plus c over a equals 0, because 0 over a is still 0. Now I can follow the completing the square process. I start by subtracting the constant, c over a, from both sides. And I get x squared plus b over a x, leave a space, equals negative c over a. Now, recall that what I want to put in here is I divide this by 2 and then square it. Well, b over a divided by 2 is b over a times a half, which is b over 2a. I square that, and I get b squared over 4a squared. Square the top, square the bottom. If I added b squared over 4a to this side, I have to add b squared over 4a squared, to the other side. Now they're balanced. And I have now created, this factors into x plus b over 2a squared equals. Now, over here, I'd like to have a common denominator. So I'm going to take negative c over a and multiply top and bottom by 4a. Notice that 4a over 4a is equivalent to 1, so I'm not actually changing the value of negative c over a. But I am putting it in a different form, and it becomes negative 4ac over 4a squared. So I have negative c over a minus 4ac. Let me see here. I'm sorry, let's go back. I have b squared over 4a squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. All right, so this, by multiplying it by 4a over 4a, gave us a common denominator of this 4a squared. Now, these two are combinable because they have the same denominator. So I can say b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. 4a squared. Same denominator for both. All right, now I'm going to take the square root of both sides here. and here. That cancels that. And I get x plus b over a, b over 2a equals, now this here is the same as if I had two separate radical signs, one over the top, one over the bottom. The square root of 4a squared is 2a. So what I get is, this, by the way, should have been a plus or minus when I took the square root. So now I have plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now I subtract b over 2a from both sides. I get x equals negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of, this was 2a, the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's over 2a. Notice we have a common denominator. So I can put the numerators together over one common denominator of 2a, and now I have opposite b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that is the quadratic formula which allows us yet another way of solving quadratic equations. So now we have factoring, completing the square, and using the quadratic formula. There are other ways. You will get into those in Algebra 2, using matrices, for example. We won't do that in this class, but 3 ways is enough for us. Notice also that the a, b, and c in this formula are the same a, b, and c in a general quadratic equation. So a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, and c is the number, is the constant. All right, in the next video, we will use the quadratic formula to solve a couple of quadratic equations. Thank you very much.